My gaming journal has officially gotten too chunky for me to work in, so it's time to move on to a new book. But before I get into the new book, let's go over how I filled this Dungeons & Dragons journal.
Hi, my name is Josephine. I'm an animator, a journaling and role-playing enthusiast, and overall just a creative venture. And today I will be going over my completed-ish RPG journal that I've been in for about 3 years now, and you can see it's gotten quite thick. So I'm going to go over what I've put in here and how I've laid this out to help inspire you to create more, do more, and have fun with your journaling and tracking of your tabletop adventures, of your journaling adventures, and overall just your writing and daily practices. A quick background, since it's been a while since I've shared this, I have been into tabletop RPGs for a little over 8 years now, and it is a fun passion of mine. I've collected quite a few books, and I have also been really into zines lately. And with that comes a very interesting genre of solo gaming, of solo RPG journaling games. And so since I have over 1,000 games that I've collected from various bundles on itch.io and other places, from going to fairs and seeing what people have shared, I am working on sharing more here with you. So let's get into how I have set up my journal and my gaming journal so you can see different ways to lay it out and how you can add to your book. For my gaming journal, I work in a 6x8 5A size Hobonichi blank book. This is actually a OneNote book, but the company that makes OneNote no longer carries this style of notebook, but you can get the Hobonichi blank books, which essentially works the same as this book. I especially like Hobonichi because it has some of the most unique covers I've ever worked with, including the Inuyasha limited edition cover that they did several years ago. And I like to keep this as part of my gaming journal. Usually these pockets are filled with a whole bunch of different items, such as stickers, papers, and little reminders of how I play in my gaming journal or how I want to set up my page. But since I'm about to get out of this book and pull this book out, I have taken a lot of that away and have either included it in this book or it is going into my new gaming journal. I am going to temporarily switch covers into a new book, which is from the Franklin Covey Her Voice collection that was out when I was like 12, 13 years old. It is a very old cover that I've kept in my collection for a very long time. And as you can see, it is very well worn, well loved, and I just miss being in this cover and want to use it to remind me of that time and that space and just how much I love it. I will probably go through and repair some of the damage here by putting a new piece of fabric over it so it doesn't tear as much. Sadly, Franklin Covey doesn't make these covers anymore, as they have moved back to just making standard planners and standard notebooks. Since the OneNote was originally like 600 pages deep, I actually split this book into two and put a new cover over top of it so that way it wouldn't tear at the binding. Initially, I was just using this book for a general notebook and keeping some things I wanted to remember. And then I was introduced to solo journaling, specifically the solo dungeon crawl system, of how to integrate Dungeons & Dragons into a story journaling adventure game that you can play on your own. That way I could run through the different modules that I have and find more ways to play tabletop RPGs by myself and with others, because sometimes coordinating can just be a little hard. So I began taking notes on that, and since I was already very much into kawaii journaling and just decorating my journals in general, I started adding to that and adding in bits and parts for my campaign. As you can see, My former long-standing campaign involved the land called Akukari, which I made a map and included that map as part of the world building and some of the characters and the player characters that were a part of the game, which we originally had different little icons that we used to put in different orders to show who was up next in the initiative order. I thought I would use this book as a reminder of ideas that I wanted to complete, but really it became a book that helped me flesh out my world a little bit more. This was at the halfway point in their story where they get to Iridis, which is the center of the Rainbow Reserve, which the Rainbow Reserve is based off of the Reading Rainbow television show, where it is essentially an infinite library that comes to life. This is about halfway through the campaign, and this is the first time where they were truly celebrated as heroes of the realm. I have lots of notes about their downtime, and also during this time is when Vox Machina was just being kickstarted, so I included bits of the packaging into my book. I sometimes run other stories with other fellow dungeon masters where we go through and switch off who is running the campaign at that time. Dragon's Ragna was based off of the Transformers movie, where all the players actually got to play as like level 15 dragons, had to go in and defeat a giant killer planet that was coming to eat the world. So I included the Dinobots in here and also included their stat block, which I built based off of various creatures that you can find in Dungeons and Dragons and things that I knew from the TV show. When I'm studying up on different adventures, I like to post things in here as much as possible so it can make it easy to reference back to them when I am in the middle of a campaign. These are notes from a kid's game that I was playing and how to use a craft system along with the player characters that they were creating. As you can see, I like to include little pop-ups and be playful with it. And then you get into the solo adventure games that I've played. I have even written letters and other things related to the adventure games. This one comes from Apothecaria, where I have tried out little notebooks and have made it into full zines that you can find on my website. This was so fun. A friend of mine ran a spooky campaign where we were all skeletons that were a mariachi band, and we had to rescue our manager as we went to go play for a mafia boss's quinceañera. One thing I like to do for each of the different campaigns that I'm in is make specific bookmarks for them, so that way it makes it easy to flip between the different areas, and it allows me to use up the stickers that I have. That way I'm not always keeping just one bookmark for the entire book. Sometimes I like to look at what other people have created for Dungeons and Dragons books. One person that I found is how they chose to lay out their book with a title, a session list, a timeline, birthdays for both characters and the person who is playing that characters, the characters, main enemies that they are fighting, the story beats that they wanted to include in the book, maps, books for the characters and their character inspiration, and any media inspiration such as books, movies, or quotes that they wanted to keep in their book. This is still a very good outline that I will be coming back to when I am running a longer campaign. I'm currently taking notes on Helena's Guide to Monster Hunting. It is a very thick book, so once I finished going through and seeing what I like about what they've included in this book, I will probably set up my new D&D notebook for running this campaign. One way I have built up some of my character pages or my character sheets is actually giving them full spread pages where I have their rituals and spells on note cards that I can pull out and easily refer back to them in a little pocket at the beginning of their character page. I have this little flip out here with the character being a druid, their name, an earth genasi, a folk hero, and they took the land archetype. I got really detailed and had a lot of fun playing with this. And I also made a bookmark with her 2 birds that she was carrying, and I happen to have a sticker that stay humble and be kind, which is a very good explanation for this particular character's disposition. I did mean to draw this character out here, but ended up not doing that. I have drawings of her elsewhere, which I'll post here. And then one phrase that I thought would be funny to include that she would use all the time is best to please a dragon's love more than worry over a lesser tyrant. Essentially, the saying is reminiscent of don't fret over the small things when there are bigger fish to fry. And I included things I really wanted to reference back to that were too big to put in the initial book. Like there was a Potter's Tools variant that somebody had created of how to work that into your system. How to work that into D&D. I thought it was pretty interesting as far as imbuing craftsmanship into the game to help with world building and with character development, rare items to make the items that you're looking for, and the spells that my character could eventually have as they leveled up, as well as a druid quick guide reference to what to do when they level up. Here I've decorated it with their proficiencies, and since they were a druid, I included my druid sticker that I've created here, and eventually I'll get around to putting them on my website so you can have them too. This is one of the most in-depth characters that I've built. Usually I keep my characters pretty light and simple and then build into them as the story progresses. Really like story building. You can see I put a lot of work into the background. For this seafaring adventure, I happened to have picked up this Piratology book. A kid had drawn in it and had made a lot of marks along the pages, so it wasn't really good to use just as this book. So I repurposed it by taking out some of the images and using it as decoration here. Once I've gone through and used all the pages up, I will actually cut into it and use the binding and this book cover over again, so that way it gives new life to the book. Sometimes I have different memes that pop across my page and I print them out and I like to include them into this book. Metapigeon is one of my favorite memes that I've seen and had to totally include this, especially for the kids campaign that I was running at the time. I was in a different book for that campaign, and since I'm not a big fan of composition books, I tore out those pages and took 2 pages from this book, taped them together to make its own little pocket in the interior of this book. It's always good to help plan out a session 0 where you talk with your GM, or in this case I was talking with several GMs as we were playing a cycle game where we were all playing in one world, but we'd each run a different adventure within that world with our characters. For the big boss of our library adventure, I actually got really into it because I designed the creature to be like a beholder and I wanted it to pop out of my book. This is when I was starting to really get into pop-ups, and I wanted it to be just as intense for me as it was for the players, because this was a huge moment that they were building up into, and having a book beholder was a fascinating idea that I built it up into it, especially since I included transport them into books and they could have different scenarios based off of if they could succeed or fail their saves. One of the little things that I've created to help me keep track of things in battle, especially when it's a battle that runs over multiple sessions like this one, because my average session length is about 3 to 4 hours. It's not always enough time to play through a whole battle, especially one as big as this one. I have the rounds written out on the side, and then I have a space for their melee attacks, their spell attacks, their legendary actions, the layer actions, and their spell abilities. This library card bookmark was a really cute gift from one of my players. I often struggle with pronunciation of words, especially in the fantasy realm, so I try and make notes of it. I don't always get it right, but I try. One of the ways I like to set up my pages that it wasn't easy to see in some of the other pages that I've shared, laying out the plot hook, the loot, the people or important people that we need, the characters, which is just various funny things that the player characters have said during the game, the initiative order, the character notes, locations that need to be remembered, and additional people to remember that are not very plot specific. I mostly wrote this because it was related more to the character notes and I wanted to remember how their relation was to each other. I like to try and write this format for most of my games, whether I am a dungeon master or if I am a player, so that way I can keep track of things. I usually keep a bigger section for notes because there's a lot of notes and things that are happening within a game. One game that I played was called Dream Askew. It uses the Blades in the Dark system, just a bit more simplified with the GM-less system to do collaborative storytelling. The characters that I played in this were hawkers, which essentially are a type of merchant who scavenge things to sell to other people. We'll be bringing these characters back for post-apocalyptic style games that I will be playing. Dream Askew is a game where you play as a group of people who have come into contact in a psychic realm, build a community after the apocalypse has happened. There are 6 roles that you can take up and 8 different cards that you can trade among each other to affect the story that you are telling. I really do love how a lot of my pages turned out. Some of them I didn't like initially, but looking back on them, they are very fun and colorful and really bring out the best of playing those games at the time. This is why I love collecting stickers so much, especially when I can plan out the theme for how the adventure is going to go. One of my players actually gifted everybody these really cool sticky notes that are HP trackers, and they also track your initiative order. This is very helpful to keep on hand when I want to have a quick reference. As we get further back in this book, I decorated less and less because I didn't have time or I was really organized. So this honestly happens a lot when I am coming to the end of a book because I am ready and eager to start a new book. You can see some of the solo adventures I've started playing has less and less decorations. I like to go through and decorate a book beforehand so that way I can at least have some images when I finally get to these last pages to help the book really stand out and build into something fun that I can keep for time in memoriam. Still have a few more pages to go that is reserved for some of the solo adventures that I've already played, but since I am reviewing a lot of games right now, I went ahead and started a new book. That is all that goes into the creation of my Dungeons & Dragons journaling book, or my tabletop RPG journaling book, whatever you want to call this. I have a lot of fun creating these, and this is actually one of the largest books that I've ever created. Thanks so much for watching and joining me as I share this with you. Now that we've gone over my journals and such, I did at the beginning of the video mention that I am an animator and I do a bunch of different projects. I'm working on several different things right now. What does that mean when it's working in conjunction with tabletop RPGs? Well, I've been working on having more fun with what I'm doing and playing with it. And so although it's taken me a little bit longer than I expected to put this together, I'm doing a stop motion of sorts to share some of the tabletop adventures that I get into, specifically relating to solo adventuring. This has been a fun way of incorporating pop-up papercraft and my animation skills together to encourage me to have more fun and be playful with it. This short is related to Gourmet Street, which is a short tabletop RPG zine that I did a review on earlier, and I will be going into how I played this game and how the story played out for me in this solo adventure. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all that jazz, and I will catch you soon.